Of course you love a pint of Ben & Jerry's, but maybe you don't love sharing your pint of Ben & Jerry's. No problem. Now you can share the love with Ben & Jerry's new Scoop-A-Palooza. 28 whole ounces of crowd-pleasing flavor in a single tub. It's an instant ice cream party. And if that means your favorite pint is left just for you, so be it. Ben & Jerry's new 28-ounce Scoop-A-Palooza. Made for sharing in 4 larger-than-life flavors. See benjerry.com/palooza.
Impact confirmed. The Slayer has been activated.
Demonic threat level increasing.
Hold the line!
All the power of hell cowering before one man.
id Software presents Doom, The Dark Ages. Available now on Xbox Series X and S, PlayStation 5, and PC.
Rated M for mature.
The Rev and the Rabbi. Entertaining and informative. On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Good morning, I'm Rabbi Joseph Potasnik.
And I'm Reverend A.R. Bernard.
Reverend, you and I stood together with other faith leaders at a tragic time this week upon the murder of Sarah Milgram and Yaron Lashinsky, who were victims of terrorism here in the United States, in Washington, D.C. Their lives were taken from them because they were Jews. And I have to say, as painful as this period has been, it was at least heartening that we get representatives of different faith traditions saying we stand with you. And I think you said it best. When I spoke to you on the phone that morning, you said, what can we do? Not what can I do, what can we do?
And I think that's important. It's about we. As I said in the remarks, and thank you for the opportunity for me to share. But, you know, we have to stand in solidarity with one another. And we have to urge communities to resist this kind of thing. Because if we allow it to happen to one community, all right, then we're not thinking through it can happen to all communities. So it starts as one, and then it begins to spread if we allow it. This is a cancer. And I will tell you, Rabbi, you know, I was a little angry, I guess, in tone at the press conference, but my anger was towards the social and political climate that we've been in our country for too long that fosters this kind of violence, this kind of thinking, this kind of response. You know, protest is great. It's American, but protests must never become terrorism.
Well, when you have students on campuses, and many of these schools are considered elite schools, who are strongly supporting Hamas committed to the destruction of the Jewish people. What are they saying? Globalize the Intifada. That means kill the Jews. That's what it's saying. How do you not expect something like this to happen? Some maniac somewhere hears those words over and over again, sees students leading the charge and says, well, you know what? This is an important issue for me. And suddenly takes the lives of 2 people, members of the Israeli embassy, who were scheduled to get married. There was a proposal that was going to take place. Just horrific. But in this climate, you can understand that there's going to be someone or others who are going to do it. Look, you got a school in New York, where is it, Cooper Union?
Yeah.
Where Jewish students hid in the library during one of the demonstrations. They were hiding in a library.
Yeah.
We don't have to, in Columbia, what goes on in Columbia, where Jewish students were afraid to walk to class many times because they knew they were going to get assaulted verbally, if not physically. And therefore, we now are paying the price for this hatred that pervades too many hearts. And I always say hatred that's in the heart soon becomes hatred in the hands.
Yeah, no, that was well said at the press conference when you uttered those words. And look, protest is important. It's part of American society. I would not be, as a person of color, experiencing the level of participation in social and political life of American society if it wasn't for protest and the power of protest. But it's still no justification for violence. You know, acts of hate, regardless of the political or religious context, is just to be condemned. It's not allowed. And if we don't draw the line where we can have differences of opinion, right, without resorting to this kind of violence, then we will have chaos in our society. It was senseless. It was tragic. And we've got to speak up, and we've got to stand together. I mentioned in my remarks that there are people who judge us, Rabbi, you and I, and organizations who stand together, united and in friendship, like we did, at the press conference this past week. And they're critical of our unity and critical of our friendship.
Yeah, look, you don't have to like all the people there, but you do have to recognize that you need all the people there to stand with you, because for too long, silence, was something that was an option for many. We talk in our religious traditions of the sin of silence, and go back to the Holocaust, go back to other horrific occasions where we said, where is everybody? Where is that moral voice? Where is that conscience? At least here, we were able to look out and say, I may not agree with everybody there, but on this issue, they are standing together, and that's what's critical.
But that's where our nation is. We are so deeply divided, and unfortunately, it's the attitude, Rabbi, is agree with us or shut up. Don't have an opinion. Don't have any other idea than what we are presenting. And that is not a democracy. That is not a society that I would want to live in. I want to be able to have a difference of opinion. I am challenged, enlightened, and inspired by differences of opinion, even that are contrary to what I believe and to what I stand. I mean, there's a wonderful proverb that says, iron sharpening iron. And when iron sharpens iron, because we have a difference of opinion or ideas, there's sparks, there's heat. But it should not result in the kind of violence that's demonstrated by what took place in D.C.
Yeah, we in the Jewish world, we're accustomed to disagreement. All you have to do is open the Talmud. You'll see one opinion differing with another opinion. And you can have all those kinds of discussions, but they're predicated on respect for a person who has a different point of view. And here we've so degenerated in our ability to be civil to one another that you can actually proclaim that you want to see the other person dead, and you can get away with it. And that's what bothers me, that for too long, too many have done these things, and there were no consequences. And
look, you and I know respect for human life, right, created in the image of God, is foundational to our understanding of morality and value. And human existence. What does it mean to be human? What does it mean to live in this world? All right, that is critical. I point back. You and I've talked about this in the past. I point back to your Hebrew scriptures and the Genesis story of Cain and Abel. In spite of the fact that Cain was guilty of murder, once he was being banned from the presence of God, his complaint was, well, whoever finds him, he's going to kill me. And God put protection on him, even though he was guilty of such a heinous crime as murder.
Yeah. Well, what I find so offensive is that here you have hostages. We're going to 2 years of hostages being held in Gaza. And these protesters, the protesters who are calling, for the support of Hamas and support of the Intifada, not a word is said about people who are being held, in caves, who are being treated in the most inhuman fashion. Not a word. And I just don't understand the value system that has been imparted to these people, that they don't recognize. We have a responsibility to people who are suffering, not innocent people who are suffering. We need to say something for those hostages.
Absolutely. And I want to clarify my statement about, Cain and Abel. I'm not saying that we should excuse the murderer. That's not what I'm saying. There has to be responsibility. There has to be consequence. But what I am saying by presenting that scenario is the value that God places on all human life.
Yeah.
And we cannot turn around and saying mine is valuable and yours is not. Therefore, I have a right, especially because you disagree with my ideology, to take your life. There's a problem with that.
Yeah. We're going to take a break. I just want to say that the press conference was held at the Center for Jewish History that's having the Anne Frank exhibit. Anne Frank loved life. Young woman. Her life was taken because of hate. And if we don't do something about it, we're going to see a lot more people lose their lives because of this cancer that has really destroyed so many. And we simply have to find better answers because otherwise they can get away with it. We'll be back.
Amen to that. Yeah. Stay tuned.
The Rev and the Rabbi on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
This episode is brought to you by Factor. Optimize your nutrition this year with Factor, America's #1 ready-to-eat meal service. Factor's fresh, never frozen meals are dietitian approved, ready to eat in just 2 minutes. Choose from 40 weekly options across 8 dietary preferences like Calorie Smart, Protein Plus, and Keto. Eat smarter at factormeals.com/listen50 and use code listen50 for 50% off plus free shipping on your first box. Factormeals.com/listen50, code listen50. T's and C's apply.
Experience a progressive lens engineered with AI from Essilor, powered by individual measurements of your visual behavior. A lens personalized to you by an Essilor expert. Discover Verilux XR Track and enjoy instantly sharp vision in motion and seamless transitions from near to far. Find your local Essilor expert today at Essilor.com.
Clorox Sentiva smells like lavender. Cleans like Clorox. And feels like...
All right, that could go on for a while. Experience the long-lasting freshness of Clorox Sentiva. Available in Clorox Sentiva Lavender Scented Bleach. Use as directed.
Home means something different to everyone. But with Rocket Mortgage, home can mean even more. It can mean a college education, taming your high-interest debt, even a renovation. We've made it easier than ever to use your home equity. That home you worked so hard for, now it can work hard for you. Call 800-4ROCKET or visit rocket.com to find out more.
Rocket Mortgage, LLC, licensed in all 50 states, and MLSConsumerAccess.org, number 3030.
The Rev and the Rabbi. Entertaining and informative on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back. I'm Rabbi Joseph Potasnik.
And I'm Reverend A.R. Bernard.
Rev, as I reflect on Memorial Day weekend, I think of my parents who every year on Memorial Day would take me to the local cemetery and they would place little stones, as many people do, on monuments to show that we're here, we didn't forget you. And there were those monuments that had flags on them because they were soldiers who had died. And I say to my dad, but you didn't know them. He said, we didn't have to know them, but they knew us. They saved our lives. And I think this Memorial Day, I know we call it a holiday weekend, but it's also a holy day weekend where we have to think of, we are here because they were there. So much to remember.
I think that's important, an important part of American society, American culture, the whole idea of memorializing those who lost their lives in battle. I think it's important because it's a commemoration of sacrifice. Number one, they sacrificed the ultimate, their lives. And we have to think about that when we reflect on the importance of this holiday, especially we're erasing holidays and changing things around. I think this is important. And regardless of how you feel about American history and its flaws, its deficiencies, the fact still remains that there were people who were willing to fight for this country. And I'm one of them, all right? I'm willing to fight for this country and appreciate what this country stands for. And the fact that we can wrestle through what we understand as the American identity.
Yeah, I remember my parents, especially my dad, would carry his U.S. citizenship paper with him so often, especially Memorial Day when he went to vote. He was so proud of being part of America because they had lived through one of the most horrific periods in human history. And here they could be Jews. They could be public Jews. They could be proud Americans. And it was a dream fulfilled. And that's why when I see what goes on today with the hatred, those soldiers who gave their lives didn't do so hatred could roam free. They did it so we could live with one another with freedom of discussion, where you're entitled to your opinion, not just my opinion. And it's a violation to me, when we see what goes on today, a violation of everything Memorial Day stands for.
Yeah, and we distinguish Memorial Day, of course, from Veterans Day because, we're not honoring vets. We're honoring on Memorial Day those who actually died in service. They were on the battlefield in service of in some way, and they died during their service of their country. Yeah.
Yeah. I was talking to a friend of mine, Rabbi Klein. We've spoken to him a number of times, and he was talking about the estrangement epidemic, that we're so far apart from one another. You go to for example, you go to a funeral service. This person is not talking to that person. There is an anger that has destroyed relationships. We become estranged from one another. And that's not the way it was supposed to be. Talk of love of family, love of friends, and yet people not talking with one another because they don't know how to disagree properly.
Okay, I was going to ask a question. Why are we angry? You just said because we don't know how to disagree properly. Unpack that for me. Is it because we feel violated in some way, diminished in some way, if someone doesn't agree with us because we feel that we're right? You're a clergyman, I'm a clergyman. Unpack that, Rabbi.
Social media has done much to exacerbate that disagreement because it often belittles the other person. You're made to feel you're less than equal for daring to share that opinion. And I think we live at a time where if someone has a different point of view, it's how dare you? How could you even think that way? That's the period in which we live right now. It's all about my opinion. Your opinion doesn't matter. And therefore, we have not internalized the rules for disagreement. You have to be able to listen to someone else who shares an antithetical point of view, but we haven't mastered that.
Isn't that part of the identity crisis that our nation is in, and that every human being really has to resolve, hopefully sometime before they hit the grave, because the identity crisis is common to every human being, every person, because beliefs tend to be tied to personal and group identity, Rabbi. You know that. Yep. And when someone disagrees, it can feel like it's a personal attack or a threat to our sense of self or our sense of community. That's why when we talk about political, elections in our nation, especially presidential elections over the past several decades, when the question is, who did you vote for? Really, the question is, whose side are you on? Where do you stand, with me or against me? And, disagreement can trigger that fight or flight response, especially when it challenges someone's core values or deeply held convictions or how they identify. You know what I mean? We're conservatives. We're independents. We're liberals. We're left. We're right. We have all of these labels that we hold on to as identity. That's a problem.
Someone once said to me that one of the most important words in the English language is maybe. Maybe what you have to say allows me to look at it differently. Maybe you're right. Maybe I'm wrong. But we don't say maybe, right? It's you're wrong, I'm right, end of discussion. And then it becomes nasty. And then we don't talk to each other. And, we get all these prescriptions. When you go to the family gathering, don't talk about politics and don't mention this issue or that issue because it's going to devolve into something that's ugly. And that's where we are. And that's, I think, part of this estrangement epidemic, where, God forbid, you have a different point of view, you're a loser. And I put a lot of it on social media because you have people out there who can write anything they want without accountability, without substantiating the facts. And if they have a few people on their listserv, they think, oh, I'm a major, major contributor. I'm an influencer. I love that word, influencer. Right?
Influencer.
It's a new category now because you have, 20 people or more that you connect with. You're a major influencer, and you have no credentials. But
it also speaks to our ego and pride, correct? I mean, people often derive their sense of self-worth from being right. There's just this great feeling we get when we know or think that we're right. So when someone disagrees with us, it's like a blow to our intelligence, our credibility, even our competence. So I think ego and pride gets in the way here.
Yeah. Some sports figure said recently that his mother taught him that humility is the victory. It's not the score. It's how you handle yourself, whether you win or lose. That's the real victory. And I think people have to learn a little more about humility. It's certainly part of our respective religious traditions, where you have to stand back a little bit, listen to someone else, disagree with someone else, but not to remove that person from the arena because that person lacks credibility in your eyes. And then you post something that's ugly about that person. It's very sad. And we should not have this estrangement epidemic that is taking over too many lives. We have a good guest coming on today, Jerry Goldfeder, who is an election and campaign finance attorney, and he's at Fordham, director of the School of Voting Rights and Democracy Project. Anything you want to know about election law, Jerry is the person. So I look forward to that discussion.
Yeah, so stay tuned for more of the Rev and the Rabbi right here on Red Apple Radio Networks.
The Rev and the Rabbi on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. I don't know if you knew this, but anyone can get the same premium wireless for $15 a month plan that I've been enjoying. It's not just for celebrities. So do like I did and have one of your assistants switch you to Mint Mobile today. I'm told it's super easy to do at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. Intro rate first 3 months only, then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See full terms at mintmobile.com.
Does it ever feel like you're a marketing professional just speaking into the void? Well, with LinkedIn ads, you can know you're reaching the right decision makers. You can even target buyers by job title, industry, company, seniority, skills. Wait, did I say job title yet? Get started today and see how you can avoid the void and reach the right buyers with LinkedIn ads. We'll even give you a $100 credit on your next campaign. Get started at linkedin.com/results. Terms and conditions apply.
Whatever the occasion, effortless elegance is right this way. Because Hilton brings you new ways to stay courtesy of the Nomad London. And it doesn't stop at award-winning dining in a space draped in velvet and illuminated by vintage chandeliers. No, this day goes beyond with unparalleled personalized service and attentive hospitality. Oh, and did we mention the Nomad London can be booked using your Hilton Honors points at Hilton.com? Hilton, for the stay.
This episode is brought to you by Chevrolet. When you have 4 new tires, every drive feels fresh. Right now, buy 3 select tires and get 1 for just $1 during the Chevrolet Certified Service Fresh Start Tire event. Visit Chevrolet.com/service offers or see dealer for full details. At participating U.S. GM dealers only, highest or equal value tire will be $1. Offer ends 5/31/2025. Not available with other offers.
The Rev and the Rabbi. Entertaining and informative on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back. I'm Rabbi Joseph Tasnak.
And I'm Reverend A.R. Bernard.
Reverend and I have come to know Jerry Goldfeder for a number of years. To me, he is one of the best election and campaign finance experts. Many turn to him for advice. He also, I think, is the only person who understands ranked choice voting. So everything you want to know or things you didn't want to know, he'll explain them. Jerry Goldfeder is with Cozen O'Connor. He's also the director of Fordham Law School Voting Rights and Democracy Project. Jerry, welcome to the Rev The Rabbi.
It's great to be with you again.
All right, so ranked choice voting.
Boy, you just jump right in. Okay,
because I get asked so many questions. I said,
the landscape.
So let's get right to it. Don't be nervous. It's really easy. You have a ballot. You have 7 or 8 candidates, and you can vote for one of them, or you can rank them. You can say, this is my first choice, this is my second choice. In New York City, we have ranked choice voting for mayor, controller, public advocate, borough president, and all the city council people. We don't have it for other races in New York State, but we have it in New York City. So you get the ballot, and you can vote for your preferred candidate, number one, and not vote for anybody else. Or you can vote for your preferred candidate, number one, and your second preferred candidate, number 2, and so on, up to 5 candidates. You can vote for all 5. You can rank them 1 through 5. You can rank 1 through 4. You can just vote for one. It's really that simple. And New York City is not the only place to have ranked choice voting. They have it in Maine. They have it in California. They have it in Alaska. They have it in a whole bunch of jurisdictions around the country. And it's really very simple. People shouldn't be nervous about it at all.
Yeah, okay. So it's very simple, as you said, but here's the big question. How does ranked choice voting upset an election?
It doesn't upset an election at all. So let's think of a quote-unquote normal election where there's no ranked choice voting. You go into the polls and you vote for somebody, and whoever gets the most votes wins. Now, the most votes can be 75%. It could be 25%. In other words, whoever just gets a plurality will win. Well, that's not necessarily the best outcome. A better outcome is to make sure whoever wins is the person who gets 50% plus 1, a majority. So there are 2 ways of doing that. You either have a vote, and if nobody gets a majority, then you have a runoff. Georgia has that, Louisiana has that, New York City used to have that. So that's one way of doing it to make sure that the ultimate winner has more than 50% of the vote that's been cast. But the other way of doing it, the easier way of doing it, where you don't have 2 elections, but you just have 1 election, is through ranked choice voting. So the voter goes into the polls and ranks 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in this case, or however many or however few people you want to vote for. And if there's a candidate who gets 50% plus 1, we're talking about the primaries in June, if they get 50% plus 1, then it's over. If they don't get 50% plus 1, then the candidate who gets the least amount of votes is eliminated. And those people who have voted for that eliminated candidate, you look at those ballots and see who their second place preferred candidate was, and those votes are distributed to the people who were voted number 2 on those eliminated candidates' ballots. And you do that until someone gets 50% plus 1. The voter doesn't have to worry about that. The computers, the machines are set so that candidates are eliminated and their votes are distributed to second place and third place preferences. All the voter needs to know is to decide who their preferred candidate is, their number 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. But the machinery, the election machinery, will distribute the eliminated candidates until somebody gets 50% plus 1. And that's a good system because it means that the ultimate winner really has gotten a majority of the votes that have been cast. And we like that.
Is that the rationale for the system? Because we didn't have ranked choice for many years. Is to make sure we have 51?
That's exactly the rationale. See, we used to have a system where if nobody got, in New York City, it was 40%. It wasn't 50%. If nobody got 40%, then there was a second election with a runoff. So we got rid of that and we put in ranked choice. So we only have one election. And if nobody gets a majority, not 40%, but a majority, then we just distribute the votes of the losing candidates until somebody gets a majority. And that's a good thing. So as I say, we do have ranked choice voting in other states, and the same system works in the other states. And actually what it means is that people campaign differently as well. So if I'm running for mayor and I'm competing against Joe Potasnik, and we have differences, but I want people who vote for him, number one, to vote for me, number two. So when he gets eliminated, because not enough people voted for him, number one, I get his number two votes. So I'll be nice to Joe on the campaign trail, or at least I'll be nice to his supporters. And that's a better way of campaigning. And actually we're seeing that. We're seeing that in the campaigns, in the campaign for mayor already, where candidates are starting to appeal to their competitors' supporters, so that even though they might not get number one, they'll get number two or number three.
So does this eliminate the ability for a losing candidate to give their votes to the candidate of their choice?
Well, no, it actually,
you know what I mean. I mean, you know, if one person it motivates people to say, okay, vote for me number one, but I like Joe. Vote for him number two. Okay.
Is it always possible to get 51% with ranked choice, or can you be in a situation where you don't have 51%?
No, you'll always get it because you look at the ballots, and if nobody gets 50% plus one, we have the candidate with the least amount of votes gets eliminated, and his second place votes get distributed. And if still nobody gets 50% plus one, then we eliminate the next losing candidate and the next losing candidate until we get to two candidates. If nobody gets 50%, until we get to the last round when there's only two candidates left. When there are two candidates left, one of them will get a majority. One of them will get 50% plus one.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. I was going to say, so the redistribution, I'm thinking, 3, 4, 5 levels down. So the redistribution can end up having a number two choice become a number one and win.
That's exactly right. That is exactly right. So the last time we did this in a full-scale election was in 2021. So everybody who was leading on the first ballot and on the second, and on the third, until the very end. The person who was leading in the first round, who didn't get 50% plus one, ultimately won. So the mayoral candidate, the controller, the public advocate, all the city candidates who were leading in the first round but didn't have a majority yet won, except for two candidates. One of whom, his name is Shekhar Krishnan. He's a city councilman in Queens. He was number two. And the guy who was number one didn't get 50%. So they went from the first round to the second round. There were other candidates, and their votes were distributed. And Shekhar Krishnan, who was not leading in the beginning, led at the end, overtook him, and got more second and third and fourth place votes, so that ultimately he became the winner. It only happened in two cases out of 51 council people and 5 borough presidents, and 3 citywide. It's happened from time to time in Maine, a congressional candidate who was second in the first go around, and the second or third go around, they won. And the same happened in Alaska a few years ago when Sarah Palin was running for Congress. And so she was leading, but ultimately she lost because the second and third votes, the second and third preference votes, were distributed to someone else. So sometimes it means that the person who is leading at first, most of the time they win, but sometimes they don't.
Yeah.
But think about it this way. If it were just a quote-unquote normal election, the way I put it, then the person with 40%, 30%, 25% would win, plurality. But it's much better if the person who ultimately wins has support from more than 50% of all the votes that are cast. As I say, it sounds a little complicated, but for the voter, it's really simple.
Yeah.
You vote your preferences, and whoever at the end of the day has more votes cast for them, whether it's number 1 and number 2 and number 3, they will prevail and they will win.
Jerry, we're going to take a break here. When we come back, I want to talk about a number of things. Voter apathy, which is so detrimental to our elections, but also that in New York we have a candidate who is clearly anti-Israel. I never thought we'd see that in New York City. So we're going to talk about a number of these things. We come back with Jerry Goldfeder.
Yeah, so stay tuned for more of the Rev and the Rabbi right here on Red Apple Radio Networks.
The Rev and the Rabbi on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
This episode is brought to you by Loom by Atlassian. Are you feeling stuck at work? Get your team unstuck with Loom video messaging and move work forward. Use Loom to simultaneously record both your screen and yourself to share a quick update, provide feedback, train a colleague, and everything in between. Plus, add Loom AI to your meetings for instant written notes and recordings. Try Loom today at Loom.com. That's LOOM.com.
How does PwC take your company to the leading edge? They bring the sharpest minds in tech to your team, so you can bring the ideas that will transform your business. They're passionate about your industry, so you can walk into any room with every advantage. And they're with you every step of the way, so you can know you're headed in the right direction. PwC builds for what's next, so you can get there now. Get started at pwc.com/us/leading edge.
Jif peanut butter. It's that jiffing good, it doesn't really need advertising. So instead, enjoy the calming sounds of the ocean. Jif. Ooh, it's that jiffing good. Get your Jif at Jif.com.
Anyone can follow. It takes something special to be an original. Which is why the 2025 Lincoln Navigator SUV arrives with new ways of surrounding you in luxury, including the ultra-wide 48-inch panoramic display and the multi-sensory Lincoln Rejuvenate experience. A true original never stops evolving. So meet the 2025 Navigator, the original that's all new and better than ever. Learn more at Lincoln.com. Lincoln and Navigator are trademarks of Ford or its affiliates.
The Rev and the Rabbi. Entertaining and informative on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back. I'm Rabbi Joseph Tasnik.
And I'm Reverend A.R. Bernard.
We're talking with Jerry Goldfeder, who is a election campaign finance lawyer at Cozen O'Connor and director of the Fordham Law School Voting Rights and Democracy Project. Jerry, let's talk about the non-voter turnout. What percentage of people don't vote generally in the elections?
Well, in New York City, we have a really pitiful situation. We have a very low turnout. It's really terrible. In 2021, I think it was 26% turnout in the election. That's really terrible. In New York City, we actually now have a mayoral charter revision commission, and they're charged with amending the city charter. And part of what they're considering is changing the election law again to make it more open. They're thinking about having what we call open primaries. So instead of the Democrats voting for the Democratic in the Democratic primary, Republicans voting in the Republican primary, we'll have one primary, and everybody will vote. And the people who get the highest, the two candidates or the four candidates who get the most votes will go into the general election. Well, in other cities where they have switched from closed primaries, what we have now, to these open primaries where everybody votes, the turnout has been dramatically improved. So the Charter Revision Commission is looking at that to modernize our elections and to increase turnout and to give everybody a chance to vote in the primaries. And as I say, the top two winners or the top four winners, they're thinking about one way or the other, will go into the general election. And we have that system in other states, notably in California, where in that case, it's whoever the top two candidates in the primaries, where everybody votes, go into the general election. So the Charter Revision Commission is thinking about this, considering it, holding hearings, and they're going to put this on the ballot in November if they decide to do that. Not for this coming election, obviously, but for future elections. So they're thinking about the problem of low turnout in New York City, and they're trying to come up with a solution. I hope they do.
So it's interesting because I'm sorry, Rabbi.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, in reference to that, I was looking at some of the numbers from New York City Campaign Finance Board, and we in 2023 we had 81.8% voter registration. How do we understand that such a high registration and yet 12.8% voter turnout?
Well, part of it is we don't really have a robust. We don't have a culture that really encourages robust voting. I don't know why, but we don't. In presidential elections, we have a pretty good turnout, not great, but much better. But for local elections and state elections, we really don't. And part of it has to do with the fact that we don't have that kind of a culture. And part of it has to do with the candidates who seem not to be really mobilizing voters to come out and support them. I'll tell you something. You know, there are places where voting is required. Australia, for example, it's mandatory voting. And I wish people would think about that. Now, on some level, you say to yourself, what do you mean mandatory? Nobody's going to tell me to vote. But what they do in Australia is you have to vote. And if you don't, there's a $100 fine, and then you can't renew your driver's license. And there is obviously an extremely high turnout in the high 90s. Percentage of people who vote. And from what I understand from people I've spoke to, it's anecdotal, but people I've spoke to from Australia, for them it's quite natural and they love it. Yeah. People come out and vote. So it does seem that it's anti-American in some way. You know, we have the right to be left alone. We have the right to not be bothered and so on. But that might, if we had that kind of a system, it really might change who gets elected, and maybe we would get public officials who are much more responsive to their constituents and responsible. I would hope that some jurisdiction, some city would do a pilot program where they initiated that, and I think we would see tremendous turnout, obviously. and it could really change the kinds of people we elect.
Yeah.
How's that for an idea on a Sunday morning?
That is good. But I got to tell you, from a religious perspective, I can look through our different traditions. Rev, I want your thinking. I think there's a responsibility to vote. We have a statement in Jewish tradition, the law of the land is the law which you must follow. You pay taxes here. If you're asked to serve in the armed forces, you got to go. Jury, do all those things. Voting is a responsibility. Jerry, there are just 2 minutes left. I got to ask you, we have the largest Jewish population outside of Israel. I never thought that we'd have a candidate who openly is anti-Israel and who is, enjoys popularity in certain groups. He's not a pariah. I didn't think I'd see it, and I don't fully understand it. But to me, it's not a proud moment that we can have such a candidate.
Let me just point out, because our program is national, and we have listeners across the country. Rabbi, you're speaking specifically with New York City politics as a mayoral candidate, correct?
Well, yeah, and also what happens in New York is well known in other parts of the country. Mm-hmm. Jerry, any thoughts on Zoran Mondani?
Well, I have very strong feelings about the mayoral race, but full disclosure, I represent Scott Stringer, who's running for mayor, and frankly, I don't really want to get into the personalities of the candidates because it just wouldn't be fair for me to do so, given the fact that I represent and support Scott Stringer. There are many people I know who share your feelings, and I have pretty strong feelings about it as well. But I think I want to leave it at that.
Yeah, well, I'm not representing anyone, so I can say it. And I just think that we could do better in New York than have someone who takes that particular stance. Jerry Goldfeder.
Well, let's see how the election turns out.
Yeah.
Yeah. We'll see.
By the way, Rev, let me make full disclosure. For a number of years, I served on the New York City Campaign Finance Board, and I would look forward to Jerry Goldfeder coming in, representing a certain candidate, and his presentations. As you can hear, he's very articulate. He knows the law. He knows how to argue. And really, Jerry, you have mastered this area of the law, and it's to your credit, and people are very fortunate to be the beneficiaries of your expertise.
Well, I appreciate your very kind remarks. And then I have to ask you, why did you always vote against me when you were on the board?
There had to be.
Good one.
Yeah, no. Actually, there were times I did, but you.
No, I know. I'm only kibitzing with you.
No. We all did what we thought was right, but it was a wonderful experience for me to be on that board and to meet people like you. Who are so proficient in this area. We need people who understand the law and how to represent a candidate. So thank you.
Well, thank you again. And Reverend and Rabbi, it's always great to be with you.
Thank you.
Great to have you on the program. So once again, we hope that this was enlightening as well as inspiring. Join us again next time right here on Red Apple Radio Network for another episode of The Rev
and the Rabbi.
Thanks for listening to The Rev and the Rabbi. You can hear The Rev and the Rabbi Sunday mornings at 7. If you like the podcast, share it with your friends and listen anytime at WABCRadio.com and download the WABC Radio app. Hit that subscribe button on all major podcast platforms. Plus, follow WABC on social on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and X. See you next time for a new episode so you never have to wonder.
What the heck is going on here?